Donald Trump has now had his convention. The RNC is over. Okay, so he's had his chance at the spotlight, but does he have his bump? Well, poll last week, Hillary Clinton, 49% in a CNN ORC poll, 42% Donald Trump. This week, dear God, no. 48% Donald Trump, 45% Hillary Clinton.
So let's talk about two ugly
He's on top! He's on top.
Okay, let's talk about two ugly things.
We've been trumped.
Donald Trump is on top with his bump. Super ugly. Second of all, that's a 10-point swing. That's an open-handed slap, boy.
I checked the math. It's a 10-point swing.
That's a 10-point swing. Now, that's just one poll. So here, first, let's calm down.
I have others.
Okay, John's going to give you more polls. 10 points is a big thing, but just one poll. Secondly, he's supposed to get a bump. This is a 4-day ad for him. And Hillary Clinton will get a bump from this if history is our guide, and that's almost always what happens with these conventions. Now, after John tells you the rest of the polls, I'll tell you why you should, in fact, panic.
Okay,
go
get
ahead.
ready to panic. You might want to take off your Jimmy Dore shirt because you're not going to be able to live by its creed. So to break it down in that particular poll with third-party candidates, because as we made clear recently, this is not a two-party race. Gary Johnson has 9%, which is around where we've seen him, maybe a little bit short. And so Trump might have taken a couple of Johnson points. He took a bit of Johnson. Now, Jill Stein,
Johnson and put it into his
How you get a bump. Yeah.
Jill Stein at 3%, which is, again, about where we've seen her in some other polls. Now, very interesting breakdown, not just in support for the presidency, but some of the polling of core characteristics of the nominees. Trump, 46% view him favorably, up from 39%. 43% say he's honest and trustworthy, an increase of about, I'm going to say, 5 points from before the convention, which is like a 15% swing for him. So people think he's more honest after this. 39% are also proud to have him as president compared to 32%. So again, that's like a 20-point increase in the pride they'd have in him, which you might expect after having a massive festival that just applauds you as a man. But we do have other polls, so that's the CNN ORC. We've already showed you. CBS News now has Trump up 1 point, 44-43. Let's see. CBS News has them up 1 point with Johnson at 12, very importantly. And when you jump back to before the convention, you have a bunch of polls with Clinton up 4 and 1 or 2 of Trump up 1. But now, all of the last polls that came out as of when I printed this piece of paper, Trump is up in all of them.
So
Most of them by 1, to be fair.
Before I get into panic mode, I'm going to suspect that Michael's going to tell us to calm down, and it's not that big a deal.
What I would say is that you should calm down. It's not that big a deal.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Because here's the thing, he got a bump out of a mess of a convention where the biggest stories were that his wife doesn't check her work and that Ted Cruz is as big of a dick as he's always been. And then his speech, which was about 37 hours long and made it seem like there were asteroids crashing into major cities around the U.S. And he still got a bump. At the DNC, we're going to have some of the best, most inspirational speakers in the campaigns of the last 10 years. Bernie Sanders is going to give a great speech. Elizabeth Warren, great speech, where I expect her to tear all sorts of new holes in Donald Trump. We're going to have Barack Obama, who, when he goes in campaign mode, delivers a speech like no other, where he can both simultaneously focus on how much improvement there has been in the country over the course of his past 8 years. This is not an apocalyptic hellscape, while also mocking Donald Trump in only the way that Barack Obama could really do it. And, you've got Bill Clinton is going to speak. Michelle Obama is going to give a great speech. I think she will get a big bump, whether she's
And I think
heard
she
it
will
or
give
not.
a good speech because the bar is low on her speeches. I always think the bar is the most important thing. When I say she is Clinton, I think the bar is always the most important thing, and I think she'll probably do better than
More
that. And her
inspiration.
speech is more important than any of their speeches, but you're 100% right, John, about
Do you
that.
guys think that the good speeches will dominate the news cycle as much as all the drama that's been occurring on the first day of the convention?
That's a good
My
question.
answer is no. Occasionally, I don't think anything will
a good
dominate the news cycle like the Ted Cruz story dominated the news cycle in Cleveland. I also am always of the firm belief that these conventions don't matter at all.
Really?
And the polling in 2 or 3 weeks is the polling that matters. Nothing that happens. You're not going to hear anybody in November talking about, what Ted Cruz did, or, oh, my God, Melania Trump robbed a paragraph, or, oh, my God, Barack Obama gave a stem winder in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters.
Well, part of the reason for that is that nobody uses the word stem winder anymore. But I hear you.
I've never heard that. I like it, though.
Okay. So here's the real answer. So
Stemwinder, actually,
Look.
when you think about it, sounds pretty violent.
It does. It's.
I don't want one. No.
so
I'm an old Turk.
so these guys are all right normally. What I told you about conventions is historically correct, and when think about it, if it's 4 straight days of every single speaker coming up and going, this guy is awesome. This is the best guy I've ever met. This guy is wonderful. And so now they're going to say that about Hillary Clinton for 4 straight days.
Right, but the caliber of people that were saying it there versus here is also should
Which
be
is
taken
exactly
into.
going to go to my point, Michael. I thought the convention that the Republicans had was fear-mongering, etc. And we said while we were there last week, it might work. I mean, it is awful, it is hideous, but it might work.
We also
And then-
speculated he may get a slump and not a bump. There was a possibility.
No,
yeah.
I'm getting to that. But then, to me, the Trump speech was a decisive moment. Will it cap that off in a way that is effective? And then, he's going to get a bump out of that and he might actually win. Or is it going to fall flat and then the whole convention kind of falls flat? And I thought it fell flat because it was too angry. Like, it didn't
And
strike the
boring.
right balance. Yes, and it went on and on and on. And I was like, oh, good, he might have ruined it. But it looks like I was wrong. It looks like it did work. My reading of the polls, eyeballing it, you don't really have to eyeball. You can look at the Real Clear Politics average, but but it looked like Hillary Clinton was up by about 5 points or so before the convention, and now Trump's up by about 2 points in a combination of polls. That's a real 7-point swing. 7 points swing is real. Now, if it's like any other election, okay, then the American Democrats will do it and it'll balance out and we'll back to square one. But to me, what scares me is that fear-mongering could have given him a slump. It could have fallen flat. It could have been the American people going, that was a bit much. That was too angry. There's no optimism there. There's no hope there. Instead, it seems like, for the moment being, it worked. So what we have on our hands is a real race.
Yeah.
If you think Donald Trump winning in every poll right now is not a real race and Hillary Clinton's still going to win easily, that's crazy talk. She might, but it's crazy talk to assume it, because every day that you assume that and Trump is still in the race is a very, very dangerous day.
Today, for the first time, it really hit me that there's an excellent chance that Trump is going to be our next president.
Yeah,
And
Anna was saying that in the morning. Like, she kept
Yeah.
saying, "Oh my God, he could be the president.
Yeah,
he could be the president."
The way things are going right now, if I were to make a bet, I would bet that he's going to be our next president, considering
I
how
will bet at like the cost of your wedding that he will not be the president.
that he will not be the president. Okay.
Shake. Shake hands.
No, but I offered these odds last week. I mean, I don't want to do the bet because I don't want to be rooting for Donald
Of
Trump.
course.
Right,
to win,
I know that,
exactly.
yeah.
But I had it at 1.5 to 1, like against them. Then I dropped it to 1.25 to 1. But I'm getting close to Anna right now.
Yeah.
I'm near 1 to 1.
And let me tell you why. I didn't really say this while we were covering Trump's speech. It depressed the hell out of me. It was too angry. There was a great deal of fear-mongering. We're killing cops. We need to go after these people. You know, there was a lot of fear injected into his speech. And
In
was
fairness, it hasn't
extreme-
ended yet, so let's just wait.
And it was a very long fear-mongering speech. But what I think we underestimated during our live coverage of that was just how many Americans are fearful and are paranoid and feel like the Muslims are coming to get us. Black Lives Matter, they're coming to get us. The others, they're coming to get us. Why is it that we're not taking care of our own country and we're taking care of other countries? We need to take care of our own. Those are all, the different thought processes that we experienced during the convention. And I think it resonates with people because there are individuals that are angry with the way things are in the country. They don't exactly know why it is that there are terrorist attacks throughout the world. They don't know why it is that our economy is failing. They don't know why it is that their wages have been stagnant. And so you have this candidate that's talking about all those various issues, albeit in a very uneducated and ignorant way, and it resonates with them. So I think that his speech, as terrible as it was to us, actually worked with a huge chunk of voters.
No, but to be fair to us, and I like being fair to us, we did talk about how the fear-mongering was working throughout the entire week. I just thought Trump overdid it on the last day.
Yeah.
But maybe he didn't. Maybe, if you're going to go fear-mongering, you go all the way. It's not like the Mussolini at the end pulled back a little bit and talked about rosy times in Italy, right?
yeah, of
When you
course.
go fascist, you go full fascist.
That's
Yeah.
true, and I mean it worked for George W. Bush too. I mean the same
That's
fear-mongering. What also, and you're right. I mean all of what you said is true. The other side of the coin is you forget how many people are Latin American. You forget how many people are African American. You forget how many of the people that Donald Trump, how many of the voters Donald Trump has to face are from demographics that he has never faced. Hate is bipartisan, but the rest of them are not, and I think that's an important part of this.